So that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Certainly, I'm glad to be breathing air and being able to talk to folks. And so, welcome to another one of our In the Loop live discussions. And many Mondays, not enough Mondays, but many Mondays. We've been super honored to have State Representative Kristen Arrington for District 43 to join us and kind of give some legislative updates along the path where in Florida and Tallahassee, when the legislative session was in full activity, in full in force. So we're in a different place right now where many things have been completed, certainly, including the legislative session itself for the most part. So I'm going to once again introduce State Representative Kristen Arrington and say good morning to her. And here she is. Bam.
Good morning, Keith. How are you?
Doing great. Great. It was a great day. I picked the right route to drive from my house to the office. Things are peachy keen in my life.
Sounds like a great way to start the week.
Yes, it's beautiful out. And what a great weekend. Were you able to get outside at all?
A little bit, but I got caught up on a lot of stuff at home, being back home in the district, which has been great, and kind of gearing up for a re-election campaign. So did a lot of work at my desk, but was definitely outside a few times with the dogs.
Never quite stops, does it?
Nope, but I'm not complaining. It's the alternative.
Yeah, very much so. So again, we've been very fortunate to be able to have you bring us lots of information along the pathway in this year's Florida legislative session. And we really appreciated that. A lot of people really enjoyed keeping up to date with what's going on, starting off their work week. And I think, people's lives are crazy busy. I know we know what that is. And, most people have that kind of scenario. And so it's nice to catch a little update on what's going on. So we're in a little different place now, correct?
Absolutely. We have concluded our legislative session for 2022. So unless the governor calls a special session, which there's rumors of, we won't be going back up to Tallahassee until after election time.
Well, feel free if you would. I guess I've got the little.
We gotta do the thing, right?
Do my branding moment, or my staff's gonna yell at me because I yell at them when they don't do it, with love and respect, of course. So let me go ahead and make it official. All right.
Sounds great.
Alrighty. Again, we are here with Kristen Arrington, State Representative, District 43, with another legislative session update. And so I'm definitely going to turn this one over to you and just ask you to, let us know, I guess. So my curiosity is, what things went well for you that your aspirations for the entire session for the residents, the constituents in your district for sure. And what maybe didn't quite get through the process and where that all lies for you. So where do you go from here? That type of thing for sure. So I'm just going to hand it over to you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Keith, for the opportunity. Well, like I said, we just finished up our legislative session. So depending on if the governor does call a special session, which has been a rumor for congressional maps or property insurance, but if that does not happen, then your legislators are done in Tallahassee, so to speak, for this year, and we'll come back after election time. It was an interesting session. It was great for me with the Capitol being open again, which I'm sure if you've watched before, you've heard me mention. Last session, my first session during COVID, the Capitol was closed, so we didn't get to see a lot of folks from the public, and this session was exactly the opposite, which was so great and so energizing to be able to see people from the district. And, I got to see Osceola County, City of St. Cloud, the realtors, Central Florida Hotel Lodging Association, local teachers. So it was really great to see folks from back home, but also to really get that public input but also to kind of give you a charge when you're getting a little bit tired, to hear from the folks back home, thank you for what you're doing. And so that really, really was a great thing for me this year. And I appreciate everybody who came up and those that didn't make it that reached out with messages. That really does help keep us going during those long days and long nights. The positives that we have for Osceola and for me this session is really hard on appropriations, which, as we discuss on here, is funding for projects. And a lot of them made the final budget. The Florida's budget for this session was the largest in history, thanks to federal dollars that we have received that helped us during COVID times. And looking at the appropriations sheet yesterday, it looks like it's about 153, a little bit more than that, million for Osceola County. So that would be between, myself, Representative Hawkins, Representative Tomko, and Senator Torres on the Osceola side. That's your Osceola delegation. And so, some of that money that we brought home, I want to talk about some of the appropriation projects that I submitted that I said that made the final budget. We are just waiting for the governor to sign or come through with his red pen to veto any of those. But we have a lot that did make it. We have 2 affordable housing projects, one for Hope Partnership, and also some renovations to Victory Village, which is a hotel motel conversion on 192. And they don't raise their rents, which is so important at this time. So that appropriation will help with some much needed repairs and to keep those residents safe. We also did receive funding in the final budget to do a Lake Toho hydrilla study, which we've talked about many times on here, Keith, and how important that is to Osceola and Kissimmee, and a hydrilla for our lakefront for our economic development, but also just, quality of life for our residents as well. We also have funding in there for the Shingle Creek Trail to have a security system. I know folks in the community have talked about this for a while to keep folks safe, but also to help with some of those vandalism and some of those folks that are destroying or not taking care of that property. We also have the Kissimmee Public Safety Training Facility that we're getting additional funding to help finish that. So that's great for our first responders training. Also have funding in healthcare for mental health for Osceola Recovery, which would be a new program we've discussed before for folks suffering addiction, and also to help prevent folks from going down that path. And also a vehicle for Park Place Behavioral Center to help them with those folks that they have in their new affordable housing facility there, and that will help them get them to their doctor's appointments and get them around town. And I think that that's all of the appropriations. I had to look at my cheat sheet for a minute. So those right there, about $2.5 million that just myself and Senator Torres did. But Representative Hawkins and Representative Tomko also submitted stuff for Osceola. So luckily in the budget, it has been, at least with this one that's going to the governor, it has been a great one for Osceola County. Some of the other things that changed that we've talked about here is redistricting process, which happens every 10 years. The congressional maps have not been approved yet, and we've heard rumors that the governor will veto them. So we might have a special session for that. But our state Senate and our state House seats are finalized. My area switches a little bit, which we've discussed in here, and Osceola will pick up another state House seat. So currently we had 3 of us, but there will be 4 representatives for Osceola, which I do think is a positive in the long run, because the more voices that we have for our community, the better. So that if you look on the FloridaRedistricting.gov site, like I've discussed before, it's kind of fun if you want to check out the process and see the maps. Also on the Florida Division of Elections, over this next month, a lot of folks you'll see if you watch campaigns are kind of switching seats because those redistricting numbers are finalized. Everybody's kind of redesignating themselves, where I represent District 43 right now, but in the new redistricting, I will be running for District 46. So just some changes. So those folks that like to watch that, definitely check those out. And as I mentioned, we had about 153 million that's coming to Osceola, so that's a great thing. The negatives, which we've talked about on here before, and I know are in the national news, is some of those culture wars that we unfortunately had to face this last legislative session. And unfortunately, about a handful of bills, which many have seen on the national news and might be making the courts. Those unfortunately took the focus many times when we could have been focusing on things like property insurance reform and fixing our affordable housing crisis. So those were definitely the disappointments of this session. But as you know, I always do like to focus on the positive. So there was a lot of benefits for Osceola, and you can go to my social media and you can see a web link there that will give you an update of all those appropriations. And as you know, you guys can always reach out to me with any additional questions.
That's a lot right there.
That's
right?
helpful, right?
Yeah, well, no, it's good though. So I guess so. You talked about some of the differences that might have been out there, and that are probably they are still there. Um, I think it does happen nationally, as we know, and certainly comes right down to the local with the school district of Osceola County, and that be. And I'm not trying to get negative or and to do too much at this, but I mean certainly the question of CRT, the question of what's appropriate in public schools as far as curriculum, what's appropriate as far as general reading in the media. That's a pretty pretty sizable difference in how those two sides look at things. How do we? So if that becomes something that's not that would be a special session for sure, but so how do we get to the place um, where that gets worked through and discussed without it being a heated discussion? I think that's what the challenge is. Just I'm not in a political position whatsoever. So I typically always like to say, geez, can we just not get in a room and talk about these things, and get those discussed? But then once it hits media, sometimes it becomes just polarized. How do you see that as a representative? How do you see us? How do we get together more? And is there a way to do that on some of these polarized issues?
Absolutely. And I'd love to hear some feedback on that answer too from some other folks, because it most definitely is challenging. And, what I found with some of this legislation is there wasn't a problem. It looks like that, we necessarily have made a problem. But I do think that there is ways to compromise. If we're trying to pass legislation to allow more parental rights or parental participation, then I think then we need to really, use those parents' information and what they're inputting. But unfortunately, with I hate to use the term, but the book banning laws is that someone from another country can submit online that they don't like this book. And that isn't the parents of our students. And then, we can talk about all kinds of things with infiltration from Russia and bots. And so that, unfortunately, we have so much outside influence from not just our media, but other sources and sources that are trying to infiltrate us and divide us. And, unfortunately, that is a really, really, really tough thing to beat. So I always think that there is definitely a solution. There's a way to compromise that, we can come to a solution, like I just said on this one. If it is parental rights, well, then let's just have our parents of our students be able to, submit that they have an issue with the book, not someone from another country who maybe has ulterior motives or grows up in a different place where women don't have rights and they don't want these books being taught to our students. So I definitely think that there is a way we can come to the middle. I just think that it's probably really hard during an election year, unfortunately, and when our governor is potentially running for higher office, that unfortunately these handful of bills, like I said, just a handful of them, but they are really polarizing. And really, you would think that the intention is to motivate a base, unfortunately. But 95% of the legislation, like I've discussed on here, is bipartisan, or there might be a couple folks that disagree with here and there. But for the most part, a lot of what we are doing is bipartisan, and you'll see those days when you're watching the House floor where we're going through 100 bills and it's going through quickly. And then you'll see those days where we have those 3 bills for that week, abortion and don't say gay, and
Right.
and that takes up the entire week. So I am happy to say it is only a handful of ones, and I really wish I had a great answer for you, Keith. And but I think that us having conversations about this and everybody, bringing to light that we all just need to have a conversation, or there's a way where we can always come to a compromise or get close to one.
Yeah, I know that's a challenge. Certainly, there's it's almost surreal sometimes when you step back and look at the challenge of having conversation and open discussion. And I think you made a great point. People that aren't even in the discussion end up in the discussion all too often. We deal with that as well. And I have to watch myself. I tend to be somebody that looks at it as if it's a real comment or a real point. I have to step back, and maybe my wife Lisa says, "Wait a minute, take a look at that. That's not really somebody from here." And that happens as well from both sides of conversations, where they'll go to places. We have a lot of traffic. They'll go to those discussions and start it trying to inflame to make their point, and they step back. They know the trigger words that get certain sides going, and when you do that, it's just never a good thing. And I'm one of those. I tend to be a tad on the altruistic side when it comes to even local school district meetings. I always wish, can we just back the temperature down a little bit? You got a couple, 2 or 3 different views on something. Let's hear. I want to hear somebody's view. I want to hear that person's opposing view to what my core might say. I want to hear that, because I've changed over a lot of years, and that's because I listen, I think, to other people speak for sure. So not to go on about that too long. So let me ask you this. So from here, if you were going into a session again, let's say in 3 months, which you're not, but if you were not a special session, like maybe state of Florida made a massive change, you guys are going to go every 6 months. What would you amp up? Knowing what you know now, what has gone through the system and what maybe hasn't, what would you kind of amp up going into that next session, if there was one, in the midst of the summer, say? What would you lean towards right now?
Absolutely. For myself locally, and what I've heard from legislation I proposed and across the state is HOA reform. There was a bill this session that made it through, I think, one committee stop, and it was talking about having an ombudsman for HOA, so someone could have somebody to go to that would actually more mediate a situation or properly handle it. So I think that there's a lot of options that we could do to help with HOA reform. But property insurance is a big, big problem. People's rates keep increasing. People are spending more on their insurance than they are on their mortgage, and they're being forced into citizens. So that is something that I hear from folks almost daily. And of course, attainable housing. Not just for folks that are buying, that are getting priced out by investors from other states, but also folks that are, working here and can't afford to buy or don't have the credit to buy right now, and they can't afford to rent, or their rent is going up 50% to a ridiculous amount. And we need to look out for those folks as well. The renters. We talk so much about homeowners and homeownership and promoting it, which is a great thing, but that's not for everybody. And currently, right now, not everybody can do it. So those would probably be the top 3 things that I would say would be a priority for not only our district, but statewide in Florida. And but as we mentioned, those things unfortunately did not get solved this last session. But if we were to have a session 6 months from now, that would be what I would be pushing. And I know a lot of my Democrat colleagues would be as well. And going back to what you said about 2 sides, I'm in the minority party almost. It's almost 2/3 Republicans to Democrats, but definitely I will say majority of the other side, even though we are the minority party, they do really want to hear what we have to say, and bills that we maybe don't agree with might change along the way because of holes that we punched in them, or amendments we proposed, or how those things have gone in committee, that they do make some changes along the way. So it is a really part of the process for both sides to listen and to hear that other side, even if they don't agree with it, just to try to see it.
Sure, you make a great point there. So, if you look across the country, it's very often you see what you're experiencing from a minority party scenario. So it's kind of a one way or the other. They're typically, if you look across right now, unless something's changed and I'm missing this, you're going to allow the governor in power, typically party in power, and not always this scenario. So how does that, do you think that's, I'm going to say this correctly. So do you think that's helped you understand how to communicate in a way? I think there's a different skill set to when the party is in the majority, and a different skill set when the party is in a minority, no matter which way that flips across the nation. And I look sometimes and watch how people communicate. Do you think that's brought you different ways of communicating, because it's not a given, right? You've got to really work to get your point through.
Absolutely. I would love to say that if I was in the majority party, that I would be compromising, working with the other side. But, that doesn't always happen, because when you are the majority party, you are able to, get done what you want done. And, unfortunately, that is what has happened a lot. And what happened during COVID, I felt, with the Capitol being closed, is that there wasn't a lot of public input. So things moved faster, and a lot of folks necessarily weren't aware of things. And I felt that the majority side, one of them even said it in questioning on a bill when they were asked why they were doing it. He had answered, because we can. And I think, unfortunately, that is what happens when you don't have enough balance in power. So even though we are the minority party, we still need to, and I don't think this election we will be the majority party. We do need to pick up some more seats, the Democrat side. So we just have more negotiating and more bargaining at the table, and are able to have a little bit better numbers, so to speak, so we can get more stuff done or stop other things from happening.
I find it interesting is that, so when you get to the state level, it's a Republican scenario, but in Osceola County, as we know, there are by far more Democrats registered. Certainly Osceola County is, no question. That's not changing anytime soon. So that's got to be a different dynamic for you, because you're representing a portion of the county that's obviously more Democrat led than it is Republican. So as our county commission is, and most everywhere you look, certainly that way. There are certainly nonpartisan boards and councils, as we know locally, but that must be a different dynamic for you when you get to Tallahassee. Like, whoa, wait a minute now.
Absolutely, and that's part of the reason that I ran, is that I knew, with us being a minority party, and that Osceola doesn't always get the representation that it needs to at a statewide, where I felt really great about our local leaders and a lot of the initiatives that they're doing, like Osceola proper, with free education to high school seniors. But I really believed in and felt positive for a lot of our local folks. But I felt there was definitely a missing link with that state connection, and us needing more representation that way. So that's part of the reason that I did run. And most definitely, I have to make friends on the other side of the aisle. And luckily for us, like Representative Tomko, who represented part of Osceola, she will not with redistricting. But her being chair of one of the appropriations committee was a great benefit to Osceola, and she was very receptive, because of us both serving together in Osceola, to the things that we need, like hydrilla, and also the security for the Shingle Creek Trail. So definitely, that's an example of one of those times where those relationships on the other side of the aisle are not just important for you, but are important for your community.
Yeah, like I've said this a couple of times, and I won't keep you all morning. I know you're busy. But I think that's the general expectation of the majority of the people in the land, which is, I don't know. We all wake up in the morning. I don't know that anybody gets everything they want all day long anyway. So it's just normal life, And so I think it's a general expectation of most fair-minded folk that, your representatives are going to have disagreements. The community has them. Why would our representatives not have them? But you hope you at least say, hey, if you're getting a cup of coffee at the same stand,
Oh yeah, absolutely. Going back to the awards show last night, in politics, and also in the state house, we say, you can't take anything personal, because if you do, it's going to weigh on your shoulders, and it's going to influence you. So you can't take things personally, and you have to move forward, and you also can't attack others personally, because we want to work together, and at the end of the day, we are all leaving our families for about 6 months a year, and we might disagree on how to get there, but we all do want to make Florida a better place.
Yeah, no question about it. And I've said for a while, and I maybe have done this perfectly personally, but I could never really understand why folks get heated enough to walk out of a place or end conversation, because once you're out of that conversation, you're out of that conversation. You're no longer part of the negotiation. I've never really bought into that. That's it, my way or I'm out of here. Well, you're no longer talking to anybody. Hey, let me ask you this final question, and it may be one that's a little on the crazy side or what, but again, throughout the nation, different some states meet more often as far as the representatives meeting together in a state legislative session. Some meet more often than Florida does. I think this is typically what we see throughout the nation. I think, where it's I guess they call it, they call it a part-time scenario, but this is just a goofy little question. So what would you, from your perspective, now that you've gone through 2 of these sessions, obviously different methods, how does that work with a once a year as the core meeting in the state legislative sessions? Do you think that could be altered in any way to benefit better the representation of the community?
I would most definitely say that there's probably options that we could do that are better. I do think it's tough, because if you look at how Florida and it's laid out, Tallahassee is way up there at the top. So people do, coming from Key West and so forth that are, making a part-time salary, it definitely makes things challenging for them to, take off multiple months and then travel 10 hours to Tallahassee. So, I think if that was the case, we definitely have to look at some compromise for that. Or, gosh, in a Zoom age, wouldn't it be great if we could do something like some of our committee meetings via Zoom and get more participation? So I think like everything, there's, opportunities for modernization, and, we can look at things differently, but it does get a little tricky when you're trying to cram everything into one time. And I would say that would definitely not be my preferred route. But like I said, with folks making a part-time salary and leaving their homes, their young children, their businesses, and traveling across the state, it wouldn't work if they were having to come to Tallahassee every week.
Sure. Again, maybe it's not sensible at all, but it is inside my brain. So I'll throw it out there. It just seems like, again, I know that if I was sitting with 10 people, there would be a number of ideas that said, Keith, yeah, right. You don't know what you're saying. That's why you think that.
No, well, there's states that even meet less. And what we do also in Florida is it's different on the even and the odd years. And I would say that's kind of a little wonky, and it's because of election years. So, last year I was in session January through March. March through May. And this year it's January through March. So it just gets a little bit kind of wonky, I think, for folks and trying to schedule with their children and school and, the holidays and, taking off from work, but it's different each year. So I personally would love it if it was, set kind of the same every year so people could plan accordingly, but they are not asking me about this at this time, Keith.
No, nor are they asking me either. I tend to think, and this is coming from the goofy guy in front of his computer 20 hours a day. It just seems like things change so much more rapidly now that it's like a whole year. And then, oh my gosh, I can't believe it's got to throw things whacked out a little bit because so much is changing. I mean, who would have thought we'd be talking about Ukraine?
Agreed. Most definitely. I think that we could definitely space it out a little bit more, or do like a quarterly thing. But and that'd be interesting to look at other states, because to be honest with you, Keith, I don't know what a lot of the other states do, just a handful of them. But definitely interesting conversation, and maybe something that you can talk about politically and people won't get too passionate about, or get argue or walk out on. So definitely interesting conversation, and I would love to look into that more.
Sure. So I'll let you go after this. So tomorrow, big day, should be a packed house for the Osceola Chamber, formerly known as the Kissimmee Osceola County Chamber. So the Osceola Chamber tomorrow is hosting the legislative update, which you are certainly going to be a part of. You want to give us a little, for those who don't know what that is, a little breakdown of what that is real quick before we sign off?
Absolutely. So the Osceola Chamber, thanks for correcting that, so I know for my branding purposes, each year at the end of the legislative session gets all of us together for the Osceola delegation, and we give an update. We also usually kind of have a forum where we have a moderator that asks questions that we give, and then we also present videos. But it's also a time where folks that are there can, network and actually speak with their legislators. I will be masked up. I have just finished COVID myself, so but I have the okay to go. But I will be most definitely masked up tomorrow. But it'll be great to get to see folks in person. And then that way, you can ask your legislators personal questions if you want to, and get that one-on-one time besides the show, so to speak, that will go on in the stage where we will all give our updates as well.
Well, it is a hats off to John Newstreet, his staff, certainly in the Osceola Chamber, do a great job. They really do. I think this is one of the strong events that they put on for during the year. I like it a lot. It's a great. It just feels good. Everybody's coming back. And like you said, it's a great way to network with folks. It's rapid networking because everybody wants to grab you guys, but always a great time. And again, hats off to John Newstreet and his team at the Osceola Chamber. So again, we thank you very much for doing this. I don't want to leave without saying, I realized that you have a lot going on. You had a lot going on through the whole session. So we felt pretty darn special there, Kristen, that you had spent the time with us.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. It was a great way to start out my Monday every week too, in a positive way, and also to give a recap. So I appreciate the opportunity because, as you mentioned, it is, 60 days. It's very fast in Tallahassee. There's a lot going on. So I appreciate the opportunity to give folks an update and, provide that so they kind of know a little bit more about what's going on, and that they always know that they can reach out to me if they have any questions or issues.
Very cool. Great job. And we do appreciate you very much. Certainly you're a great communicator. And I think that's, you've always been that. And so it certainly makes sense that you're doing what you're doing. I'll put pressure on you, leverage the live moment. Would you be willing when you can, on these off months, would you be able to come by once a month or so? And
Oh, absolutely. I would love to do that too. I'm going to be helping out a lot now that we've got COVID precautions, so to speak, are a little bit put to the side. Really do want to help a lot of our local nonprofits now that I'm going to be home for the next 6 months and starting my Meals on Wheels deliveries again. So love the opportunity to kind of use, unfortunately, Positively Osceola as a platform to get some of those words out, and also give updates on some of the stuff that as it goes through the budget and the governor signing this next month or so.
Very cool. You got it. So anytime you need us, just let us know. And in the meantime, we will certainly reach out to you and ask you to stop by and say hello. All right.
Sounds great. Thanks, Keith. Have a great week, everybody.
You got it. And let me see if I can get all my clicks in order here, as I think I do. So again, this is Keith with Positively Osceola, thanking State Representative Kristen Arrington for District 43 currently for stopping by and being with us together. We are certainly trying to make a positive difference in and around Osceola County. Thanks, Kristen.